Hi friends! Today I am bringing you a Booktubers favourites video. So I've been wanting to do this video for a while now, and I sat down and I watched a ton of Booktubers favourite books, and I am solely basing this within the horror genre. So all of these books will be horror books. So I will leave everybody linked down below so you can go and check them out. But they are an incredible bunch of people and I adore watching their videos. So I've chosen the most popular books that have popped up multiple times across people's videos. And so I was keeping a track of how many times these books were mentioned and picking the most popular options. So I have a stack of 6 books that are the most popular across horror booktube, and I am reading them in this vlog. So the first book was The Troop by Nick Cutter. I see this everywhere. This is highly popular across the horror community and booktube, book talk. People talk about this book everywhere, and it's been mentioned 4 times across these videos that I watched. So The Troop has been mentioned on 4 different booktubers favorites lists, and those include Gabby from Gabby Reads, Sarah from Wicked Reading, Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, and McKay from McKay's Book Vlogs. So they all mentioned this book as being one of their favorites. It's dark, it's gross, it's everything I enjoy in books. It's got survival, it's got cannibalism, I think, and it's set on a remote island in Canada. So it's kind of something that I enjoy. I recently read The Law of the Skies, and that book again is set in the wilderness in Canada, which is very dark and grotesque as well. So I think I might enjoy this book, but we shall see. I want to say thanks to those guys who mentioned it in their videos, so I can finally get around to reading this. First couple chapters of this is actually quite interesting. It's quite different because it kind of jumps into you learning about the guy and his condition and what he does. I just finished that chapter where he turns up and the scoutmaster Tim has to deal with his condition, and the descriptions are really gross, and it really does paint that picture of what this man is and how his condition actually is. So I am literally like 40 pages in at this point, but I am really intrigued to see what exactly happens with him and what he does to these scouts and the development of this story. I did manage to read a good chunk of this. I think it was like 120 odd pages. This is so gross. I am just under halfway through now, and it is so grotesque that I'm really loving it. It's kind of like a body horror type of story, so it's definitely up my street. I love that type of storyline, that plot, that narrative. And so we learn what is happening to this man and why he is the way he is throughout the story. This is kind of mixed media, which is interesting. You're following the main story, but you're also being told like how it happened and why it happened. So yeah, I mean, the contagious nature of this is very intriguing, and I'm really loving how this story is developing. I'm glad that I managed to get a good chunk of the way through this book currently, and I will try and get some more of the way through later on in the week. So I've now just finished the trip, and boy oh boy was this disturbing. This was such an incredible read. It had so much gore, it had so much action in this. I really enjoyed this entire experience reading this book. I think it's because the body horror is just so intense, and that's something that I really love in books, when the body horror is just so gross and disgusting. I think that really makes the story. So this is definitely a standout read for this video. I adore this book. I really loved how all of the characters were interacting with each other throughout the story, and seeing the development of certain scouts all the way through until the end. It was such a journey that you go on with these guys, and it's a crazy adventure because wow, that thing is just so intense. So this book is very much a creature feature that centers around body horror, and I think the back does mention, like, as unsettling as Lord of the Flies, as shocking as The Thing, the trip will get under your skin. And I really do see that correlation with The Thing in terms of the creatures and all of that side of things. So it's definitely gross and disturbing, like The Thing. And The Thing is like my favorite horror movie. Not ever, but like one of the best. So I enjoyed reading this for that reason. I could definitely see that correlation. But I do think this one does stand out on its own. Like, this is such a great read. Um, yeah, I just think that this is an incredible book. And I will say, like, I did struggle in the beginning. I read 40 pages and I had to put the book down. I just couldn't get into the writing like straight away. But once everything was kicking off and the gross things started happening, that's when I was hooked and I couldn't stop reading this. So I will say it is a bit difficult to get into the story, but once you're in, you're in. You're deep in that story and you're deep in the grossness. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I do love the fact that the characters have no idea what's going on, but us, the readers, are told through the additional mediums that are put in this. So, such as interview sections, newspaper articles, we are learning and developing what exactly these characters are going through at the time that they're going through it, but they don't know what's happening. And I think I really enjoyed that because I was able to understand what was going on and feel very um, like nervous for the people who have no idea what's going on. So I thought that was a really good touch. It's kind of similar to Carrie in that sense, where um, we're getting told what's happening through these additional mediums that are added into Carrie. And the trip, Nick Cutter does say that he's taken inspiration from Carrie. So in that sense, you can see the correlations. So yes, that is the trip. Now on to the next. So the next book was mentioned 3 times across these videos, and that is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. I adore this author. This is a 5-star prediction for me. I absolutely adored The Year of the Witching, and this has been sat on my shelves for a while, and I'm just so glad that this video has given me a reason to finally read it. We follow Marion through her journey of becoming a blood maid and what that entails, and that whole relationship development. So I'm so excited to finally read this, and see what all the hype's about. So this has been mentioned, like I said, by 3 different people in their favourites videos, and those have been Kaylee from Kaylee's Books, Lexi from Alexandra Roslin, and Alexis at Alexis Fully Booked. They all really adored this book, thought it was incredible, and has made me add it to this list as well.
When it came out in 2020, and I thought Mexican Gothic was good.
So I am just jumping in here to give you some thoughts on The House of Hunger, because I am now just under halfway through, and wow, I adore this book already. It's so intense. I really love the development of the blood maids and understanding what exactly is going on. We follow Marion, who is a maid or a servant for another house in her little town in the south in this world. And her friend discover an ad in the marriage section of the paper, and it's for a blood maid, and it's kind of like not something that is talked about a lot and accepted in the south. Whenever she starts to consider it, it doesn't go down well, and so she has to work in order to take care of her brother, who has gone through some stuff that's made him not himself anymore, and he's not a nice guy. He just did everything in his power to not let her do what she wanted to do and take this job or this opportunity to make more money, which will then in turn look after him. So yeah, he's not a nice person, and at the end of it, she still goes and becomes a blood maid for the House of Hunger. So the Countess there enjoys her blood like the taster did. Then she just joins the ranks of all the other blood maids. And now I'm at the point where we're just following that story. It's kind of like sensual as well when they're taking blood. I got to one point in this story where it was being described, and it just didn't seem like she was taking blood for the sake of taking blood, to just enjoy it. It was like an experience, and it was very sensual how it was described in here. So it doesn't scream traditional. So it doesn't scream traditional vampire story. They're not biting people's necks, and that's jazz. Nobody sparkles. But yeah, you can see that it is like a vampire-esque inspired story with the drinking of the blood. But yeah, it's so intriguing, and I really love the writing style in this. It pulls you into the story. I'm so intrigued to see where this goes and if I enjoy it. Currently, I still think it will be a 5-star for me. I'm loving it currently, and I can see why people thought this was such a delight to read. I will check back in whenever I finished it. So I have now finished House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, and I adore this book. I just think that this had so much happening in it, and I think that the writing really stood out to me. So essentially, we are following Marion, a blood maid, who joins the House of Hunger and becomes a blood maid for the contest there, and it kind of follows their relationship. And we follow her on that journey of discovering what exactly happens in the House of Hunger or being a blood maid in general. And then it gets really dark and creepy, which I was here for. I really love how gruesome this book was. Like, there was graphic themes in here, but not as graphic as all the other books that I've read. I think it was like a sprinkle, but the main focus was, of course, the relationships and the character development in this book, which was a fun time. I really loved getting to know all of the characters. I feel like their growth and development throughout the story was incredible. And I think that Alexis had written that so well. And yeah, I mean, the overall story is kind of brutal and how these bloodmaids are treated. There were similarities, I think, to The Handmaid's Tale. I didn't like that book because of the writing style, and I just couldn't actually connect with the characters. But this, however, has a similar plot, but the writing and the character development really did help with this story. But I could see the similarities in terms of how the women are treated and what they have to do in this life, in this world that they have been forced into. With this story, this is a delight to read. It has like found family elements, which was nice to read. And we follow our main character, Marion, who, like, all encompassing, gives herself over to the Countess for this relationship. And there is a lot of that in this story. And I don't really enjoy books that have a lot of romance undertones or heavily focused on that side of things. But I think that this was done so well in this book that it didn't really bother me. So there's that relationship with the Countess that gets developed in the story. And then it takes a dark turn where she then uncovers stuff. I'm not going to go into detail on that because I don't want to spoil it for you if you've not read this book. I really enjoyed reading this book, and I do still believe that Alexis Henderson, her writing is just something that I agree with and I can understand and connect with. So this was a 5-star read, as I predicted, and makes me really excited for her next book in the Year of the Witching series that she's doing. I can see why our booktuber friends had picked this one as one of their favorite books ever or of the year when they read this, because it is incredible and the overall plot and pacing was great too. So there is nothing really at fault in this book, which just made it a standout for me. So I have now finished House of Hunger for this video, and I kind of don't want to pick up another one because this one was just so good, and I don't know if my next read is going to be on the similar level to this, but I have been having success with this video, which is a delight. I mean, I'm just glad that I finally get around to reading these books that I've been meaning to read for a while. Next up is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This is a book that is set around possession and the 80s style, and it's going to be very camp because Grady Hendrix writes really campy horror, so I'm super excited to get into this book. I've loved Grady Hendrix's writing for years now, and I do have 2 more left of his books on the backlist to read, and this is one of them. So this has been mentioned by 3 different people on their favourites list, and those are Kaylee from Kaylee's Books again, Haley from Haley Hughes, and Aspen at Aspen's Archives. So this book has been added for the reason that it is out there, it's campy, it's got like summer vibes, and obviously possession and like deep friendships. So I'm intrigued, so I can finally get to read this one too. So I am jumping in here just now to talk to you about My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. In this book, My Best Friend's Exorcism explored friendship as the main theming and what people will do for friendship, as well as highlighting the possession. So this one was not his best work for me anyway. I didn't really enjoy this as much as the other ones that I've read. My favourite from him is We Sold Our Souls. So that one really stood out to me. It was fast moving, lots going on, devil based. But this one just wasn't hitting the spot as such. My Best Friend's Exorcism there wasn't much exercising going on. Like, it was dark in places. I will give it that. It was an interesting storyline, but I just feel like it was so slow and lacking. There was elements that were gross, and I loved that part of this book. And the overall friendship and how that developed through the book, and how this girl who was possessed changed over time. So it's like a really slow burn and kind of dragged for me. I didn't really enjoy this as much as I was really hoping to enjoy. But I still read it. It was still a decent read. I can see why people enjoy this, um, especially people who don't really dabble into horror that much. This is definitely a good entry point. It's like very summery. It screams 80s summer camp, even though it's not set in a summer camp. But yeah, it's so 80s. The vibe was so retro, and that was interesting to read and kind of step back in time into. So, like I say, there is parts that are enjoyable. There's elements of this book that kind of make it an average read for me, but I definitely do see why people enjoy this book. The horror in here is very light. It's definitely one that stands out, but not my favorite from Grady Hendrix. So this is delving into teenager angst and best friends in high school, like that drama side of things, with a little bit of supernatural elements thrown in. So it is decent. I can see why people have chose this as one of their favorite horror books that they've read. It's not going to be my favorite horror book of all time, but I can see why people enjoy this. I'm giving it a 3 star. I know some people think 3 stars mean that they don't enjoy it, but 3 to me is it's an average book. The plot or pacing is a lot slower, or it just wasn't perfect in my opinion. But yeah, it's still enjoyable to read, and I'm glad I give it a go. Next up, we have Tender is the Flesh, but this is one that has been recommended to me personally, something that a lot of people love or some people hate. It's very polarizing, but I've seen a lot of good things from people who have read it recently. So this has been recommended 3 times, and those people are Aspen from Aspen's Archives, again, Erin from Erin Megan, and Kayla from Books and Lala. So this one has cannibalism, and it's very much centered around like a dystopian world where animals are no longer suitable for human consumption, so people turn to farming humans. So it's going to be an interesting read. I'm really intrigued and so excited to see where this one goes. So, wow, this book was incredible. I really loved every second of this story. Um, and like my little ghost behind me, I am in shock. If you can see him, it's how I feel. I don't really know what to say. This book was so interesting. That ending is just incredible. This story is so visceral and disturbing in every way possible. This was so beautifully written. It was told through a monotoned style of writing, which is quite different. It's quite interesting in terms of the topic that they're discussing. To have it so black and white and direct was different, and it kind of just set the scene really, really well. I really enjoyed all of the descriptions and the discussions on the treatment of these humans. So essentially, this book, we follow Marcos, who is an employee working in a slaughterhouse for humans in a world when animals have become something that we're no longer able to eat due to a virus. And then they start farming humans for meat instead. And so the descriptions of these slaughterhouses and what they do to the humans, well, the heads and how they're treated, I really saw similarities in the animal industry, from how they're humanely killed, how they're looked after, and all of that stuff. It's really quite similar, which is quite disturbing. But I really love that commentary and that description in here. It was good in a way where you didn't really need to be gory. So that was quite a shock. I was expecting this to be so gory and disgusting, but it was disgusting in its own right. It didn't need to be gory. The direct, monotoned writing about the treatment of the humans was enough to make you feel disgust. So it's really, really interesting. The overall outcome as well was interesting and bleak. If you're looking for a happy ending, I don't think this is the book for you, but I really can understand why this is on people's favourites list. It's definitely up there with one of the better books that I've read so far in 2024. And I'm quite surprised that this is the first time that I'm actually reading it. So yeah, I mean, I'm so happy that this was included in this video. This book is definitely not for the faint of heart, so do check it out. If you are interested, there's a lot of trigger warnings in this, so do check those out if you are a bit sensitive before picking this book up. This is a bleak story about the treatment of humans in a dystopian world. So yeah, go in with caution, but it will be the best thing that you've read in a really long time. Next up, we have Brother by Anya Alborn. This one is something I'm going to have to read as an ebook, as I don't have it physically, but this one sounds incredible. I adore Anya Alborn's writing. They are an author that I really enjoy reading from, and this book is considered one of her darker stories. And it's centered around this disturbed family who go around killing young girls, and we follow the perspective of one of the sons, and we follow his journey with this disturbed family and what they do for a living. So I'm intrigued to see where this one goes. It's been described as really dark and disturbing, and this book has been on 3 other people's favourites list. And again, we have Erin from Erin Megan mentioning Brother. We have Mandy from Mandy's Morgue of Horrors, and Haley over at Haley Hughes, all loving Brother. So I'm super intrigued and really can't wait to get into it. I just finished reading Brother, and wow, I thoroughly loved that story. It was dark, and I can see why these creators enjoy the story. It centers around a found family and the disturbing things that this family makes their children go through and do. Brother is about Michael, a little boy who is adopted by the Morrow family and is living in a old farmhouse in West Virginia. We learn the mom and dad, the brothers and sisters, and how Michael doesn't feel like he fits in. And the revelations that come from this story were just incredible. And whilst I could guess where it was going, it didn't put me off the story. I loved every second of it. I ate this story up like there was no tomorrow, and it's so descriptive. It was emotive. You could really feel sorry for Michael and also everybody else who's involved, like the victims and the other children as well. Because at the end of the day, that is taught behavior. They all have really dark pasts, and throughout the story, that gets revealed through the flashbacks. And you kind of get an idea of who Michael is and the rest of the siblings, as well as the mum and dad, and the grandparents were mentioned briefly as well. So it's really dark. I mean, it's not the most graphic or disturbing book that I've ever read, but it's definitely up there with being a creepy and disturbing story. And I loved every second of reading it. It was a delight. And whilst I did understand where it was going and the plot twist, I guess you could call it, I knew that that's what it was, and I mean that didn't, like I say, it didn't become a problem. Usually, if I could guess the plot of the book, I would find that the book didn't do its job. But I just think that as a well-rounded reader, you can kind of see where stories go, and this one I could tell where it was going, and I wasn't disappointed. I adored the writing, but that's not a surprise. I love Anya Alborn's writing from the previous books that I've read from this author. She has such a way with words and really does describe the themes and her characters so well in the stories, and this one was no exception. I would love to know what your thoughts are down below if you've read Brother. And the last book is Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Seabright. This is a story that has been only mentioned twice, but I owned it physically and I thought why not include it in this video as well. This one has been mentioned by Jordan Reads and McKay's Book Vlogs. So in this, we're following a serial killer who is discussing murder and all of his acts. And we delve into the mind of that serial killer and we follow his journey through life from there. So this book is kind of like a Marmite for a lot of people. You either really love it or you hate it. And I'm quite intrigued to see where I fall on that scale. I think that it's going to be something that I do enjoy, but I will obviously tell you more about it when I get into it. So I've now just finished Exquisite Corpse, and I think this book does have an audience. I'm not its audience. I really loved this first chapter. It had hooked me like no tomorrow. I was so intrigued by this first chapter that I really wanted to read this in one go and absolutely engulf myself in this storyline. But unfortunately, I think the downfall in this story is the explicit nature that happens. For me, I don't really enjoy books that focus on the smut, and this book does have a lot of explicit moments in it. It's not for me. I never enjoy books that have a sole focus or a lot of the plot is focused on the explicit nature. I just don't enjoy it. I think that books can be implied. You don't have to be that explicit. And I don't really enjoy that myself. So in that sense, I don't enjoy reading about it in Exquisite Corpse. I think that really pulled me out of the story. Like I was really just wanting to fast forward those areas and just get down to the main storyline, which is centered around these serial killers and following them whilst they interact with people and how they are thinking and performing their acts. So for me, I wish that this had less of that in there. But of course, the main theme of this book is around the AIDS epidemic that really did hit and was a main focus for people in the 80s and 90s. So I can see why there was that added. But I don't know. I went into this hoping that this was just going to be delving into the mind of a serial killer, but it does have that added theme, which is so good. I think that it's really fun when a writer can use like a certain theme in a like psycho killer book and highlight that really well. So this does delve deep into the AIDS epidemic and what it meant for people and how they were viewed in society. And I really loved reading that and learning more around that topic. But yeah, this overall storyline just wasn't it for me. I wish that I enjoyed this more than I did. I just feel like the explicit natures really took me out of it. But I do think this book has its own audience, and I just don't think that's me. So I am going to give this like a 3-star because it wasn't bad. I just, as a personal reason, I just didn't enjoy the smut added in this story. And so I think now that brings me to the end of this vlog that has taken me about 3 months to create. There was so much happening and I enjoyed reading all of these books. And even if it meant that I didn't enjoy all of them, I have found some that I do love and I think will become some favorites of mine soon. So I would like to say thank you so much to all of the booktubers that I watched and who mentioned these books in some type of video that I came across about 3 months ago. Everyone will be linked down below so you can go and check out their channels. They all have incredible channels and I enjoy watching all of their stuff. So do go check those out. And thank you so much for joining me and getting to this part in this video. And let me know in the comments what your favorite book is. I might end up doing this type of video again using your favorite books. So do let me know in the comments what your favorite is. I would love to know. So until next time, keep your pages turning and embrace the darkness. Bye!